if you bought a property 20 years ago, not only would you get good cash flow, but you're also going to benefit from capital appreciation at a time where property prices were rising. I can't see property prices rising at the same rate that they did 20 years ago. If someone's like, I've got money, what should I do? I would encourage them to do. We've got a housing problem in the UK, yet you're penalizing those who are giving supply to the market.
What made you say I actually want to go and invest in Dubai?
PBK podcast is sponsored by Faraway Pizza, the fastest growing pizza company in the UK. With over 160 stores, you can definitely find one near you. If you want a slice of their flavoursome pizza, then you can use our discount code PBK20 at faraway.co.uk to get 20% off. Once again, PBK20 at faraway.co.uk to get 20% off.
And we are back for another episode of the PBK podcast. Consistently, each and every week, we are back with another episode. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our amazing guests. This week, we are joined by Amish.
How you doing, bro?
Full name, Amish You.
Amish You, I'll take it, bro. I'll take it.
And we said pre-podcast, we said, that is like, you were blessed to have the best chat up line. Your full name is just Amish You.
It works, bro. It's a great conversation starter. Although sometimes people look at me like, what the fuck is he talking about? But it's cool. I'll take it.
I hear you. I've actually, do you know what? Before we dive into the property journey, conversation starter is always a really good place to start. What are you like naturally when it comes to networking and meeting people? How do you find that?
Bro, I love it. I love it. And the approach that I always take is to try and find a conversation starter that eases a bit of comfort. We're walking in, start talking about gym, just to like keep it casual, make it change the dynamics.
And make it relatable, right?
Yeah, bro, that's another keyword, relatable, personable. I love building relationships. And if I think about my network, yeah, I've got groups from 10 different social groups. So if you put me in a room with 10 different people from 10 different backgrounds, whatever, I'll be fine. I'll find a common ground and I'll build that relationship with them. So for me, in that social, people think I'm more social than I am, but I think it's the ability to walk into a different room and hold your own. And I think I'm okay. We're all on a journey, but I think I'm okay at that.
That's good. I mean, yeah, it's a really strong strength. Like, you have to work with your strengths and work with things that, you know, you're good at to maximize your ability to be successful.
100%.
So for those that are not familiar with you, obviously you are a property investor, have more holistically focused on buying property in London, but just give people an introduction to who you are and what you do.
Cool. So, bro, my first insight into property here was my cousin brother-in-law, who always driving a flashy car, living in a penthouse.
Had to work that one out. Cousin's brother-in-law. Okay, cool.
So my cousin's sister's husband.
We're there.
Because, bro, no one in my family was into property before that. He was the first one, and I always saw him with a nice car, penthouse, etc. But I'm about 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'm thinking, wow, like, what is he doing? And that was my first insight of, actually, I want to get into property. So then, and that was no working class family, bro. It's not feasible. It's nothing we've gone into before. Always telling my old man, try and get in. When I was at an age where finally got a graduate scheme, placement year at EY, Mr. Deloitte over there.
Yeah.
I had a target of, I just want to save. So at the time where everyone's going out, living a lavish lifestyle of after work drinks, spending their first income on a car, etc., I would just focus. I had a target in head that I want to get my first property. So from placement year, I set myself a target. So I was 19, 20 at that point, set myself a target, which I didn't hit. I failed, but it set me up. So when I had my graduate scheme, I was already focused and doing my ACA qualification. So at the time where I was just focused on revision, I didn't have time to go out for drinks and etc., etc. So bought my first property when I was about 22, 23 in London.
What was your target that you set yourself?
So on placement, yeah, bro, my salary was 18 grand. I was living out in Birmingham, and I tried to set myself a target, which was never going to work, of 10 grand while I'm living out. So it's not about, the financial target. It's about the mindset that created, because going forward, I always knew I was working towards something. So when I had my graduate scheme, using that as a basis to keep building, which then allowed me with my sister to get my first property. And that was always, I was always pushing for that. So when that was secured at 22, 23, cleaned me, everything gone. But that mindset was already built. So I'm thinking, shit, I shouldn't swear, should I?
You can swear if you like. It's okay.
I was thinking, as soon as I bought the first one, which was in Wood Green, 3-bed flat, at that point, I was not happy at the price. and there was a lot of agent fees here and there, which I was a bit skeptical about. But that set me up for cool. Now I'm clean. Now I'm empty. Bank's broke. I want to work for the next one because that mindset was already built, and it was good because it's about 3 years after bought my second, and then I've tried to continue investing to the point where in COVID I bought one which was a great opportunity, and I was prepared to walk away. And now each of those are yielding about £700 a month. And I say to people, I know, but I don't believe in buy to lets anymore. Yeah, so now it's not something I'd go for, and I don't use my property income as my day-to-day spending. That's there to build for the future. I've got a day job, so I'm doing this on the side, and therefore, however I can build that going forward, I'll take it. So yeah, small portfolio in London, and recently last year, as I mentioned, I invested in Dubai, which I'll continue to do so because I think there's greater opportunities there, depending on what your strategy is.
I think we're going to get to the Dubai versus London. Let's go back to,
Cool.
so you saved, and I think it's interesting you touched on the fact that you bought with your sister.
Correct.
Why, what was it that, why did you decide to buy with a sibling?
So one, bro, I can't afford in London, bro. Can't afford in London. And two, that was actually encouragement for both of us to try and get involved. Sister's less keen on property, and therefore I've continued my journey after. Whereas that, and at that point, that's on my personal name. Whereas going forward, then tax laws change, etc., etc. So from then on, it's more so been through a company by myself. Because one, I think you should have that asset, and at that point in time, you can get funding from someone, etc., etc. But I wasn't in that position.
So you and your sister came together, and was that a residential purchase, your first one, or a buy-to-let?
Buy-to-let.
So first one was a buy-to-let, and you bought that as an investment property.
Yeah.
I think I always try and, because different people are at different circumstances of their journey.
Yeah.
And obviously you had it in your head, okay, I've seen this guy, he's got nice things, and what allowed him to get those nice things was being a property investor. So that was always your, okay, that's how I can do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of actually understanding, you mentioned about fees and unforeseen. With that first property, in hindsight, was it a good deal?
Bro, in hindsight, it was. Yeah. At the time, I
You
was
weren't
very,
sure.
I was prepared to walk away. Because I felt goalposts were moving, etc., etc. However, there's a lot of things I've learned. So that I actually hate that property. I hate that property. It's doing me. It's yielding the most, but it's a stressful property. But the first, and do you know what? When you see someone,
But what about it makes it stressful?
because I'd say it's not in a great area. It's not a desirable property.
So your tenant profile isn't
Yeah,
necessarily the same you
it's
would get
caused.
elsewhere.
So it was on a guaranteed rent with an agent, and I had a few issues. Like, to be honest, I was hands off. I was hands off for a number of years. Yeah, and on a guaranteed rent contract, I'm accepting lower than market rent to have that security. And then once upon a time, this is about 2 years ago in Easter, I get a call from the tenant, and they shouldn't be contacting me. Yeah, get a call from the tenant saying, "Oh, listen, the council are moving me to another property, but I want to stay." I was always good to her, but I shouldn't be her point of contact. So she's being moved, and the agent turns around and says, "Listen, if I'm not getting paid, how can I pay you?" I go, "Bro, are you crazy? Look at clause 1.A, 1.1, whatever of your contract. It says I will be paid indefinitely whether there's a tenant or not." He tried, like, it was a messy situation, but I stuck to what I know was right. I could have walked away, but I just thought, I don't like certain people thinking it's easy to walk away from their obligations or not being held accountable. So luckily, he fulfilled his obligations, and then I started managing that myself, which was difficult. But now that one, I've come across another agent who provides it on a short-term letting basis.
So they would rent the property from you, still provide you with guaranteed rent,
And I'm getting above market rent, which is not. So
and they would then rent the property out on a short.
You know what? They're not renting it out. Yeah, they're providing it to. So it could be someone who's has a carer, someone who's come out of prison. It's like short-term temporary accommodation.
Okay, like temporary accommodation.
but
They were
it's
getting nightly rent from.
But it's different to what I had before, because that was also on a guaranteed rent basis, whereas that was like a long-term contract.
So one was like some more social housing, the other
Yes.
one was more assisted living.
Correct. And now, because of the relationship I've got, and I've come up with an arrangement with the agent who I'm using now, bro, I'm getting more than market rent. I'm totally hands off. So now I was prepared to sell that property, but now that I've got this, it's making a good return. Whereas the others, I self-manage because they're a lot closer.
And I think it's interesting, obviously, you touched on the fact that you've maybe kind of fell out of love with buy-to-lets a little bit. And I think that is the case for a lot of landlords. But for those that maybe are struggling, you've seen how you've been able to pivot and use other opportunities, whether it be assisted living,
Yeah.
whether it be, rent to serviced
Yeah.
accommodation, whether it be social housing, to make what has maybe been an investment that's been slightly beaten up and trodden on,
100%.
make it that little bit more attractive and more viable.
100%.
But another thing you touched on is also the importance of your contract.
Yeah.
Because guaranteed rent can be amazing, but
Yeah.
it's only as good as the strength of your contract.
Yeah.
And you've spent all this money to buy a property, maybe refurbish a property, your time to understand what's a good property to buy, and then people just rush to get tenants in.
Yeah.
But I think your investment is underpinned by the value and the strength and the validity of your contract. So you have to make sure that it's fit for purpose. And if you don't understand how to read it, then get a solicitor to give you a second opinion.
Yeah. But you touched on a point of a rush to get tenants in. So now the two other properties that I have, I would never encourage someone to try and rent a property in November, December. Because the second property I bought, I got it November 17. And I was stressed every day because I was self-managing that. And I would always encourage, if someone's using an agent, learn how to self-manage, because then you can judge and evaluate how good an agent is if you do want to use an agent. I didn't feel comfortable paying an agent 10, 12% when I don't trust agents. So I was so stressed about finding a tenant because I've got bills, etc., etc. So I rushed and I made a bad decision to get someone in as soon as they became available. That was January the 1st, I think. Put it this way, 3 months after, I had a message from the neighbors saying, listen, I don't know what's going on. I just had police round, etc., etc. I go to the flat, my tenant's not there. He was paying rent, no issues. But 15 people, it was like a drug spot. It was, I walked in and I'm like, where's my tenant? They're like, who are you? I'm like, I'm the fucking landlord. Luckily, I don't know how God looked after me, yeah? Within 2 days, I got the property back.
Oh, wow.
And I had a guarantee, because I made the contract myself. I had a guarantor, spoke to the guarantor. I'm like, listen, your name's here. Better for you to just walk away from this. Luckily, I got that property back, but it was a great learning, because now in my other two properties, bro, my tenants have all been long-term and I will screen the hell out of my tenants beforehand, which has meant that now, even those that I self-manage, I'm pretty hands-off, which is like, that's an ideal situation. It's not guaranteed rent, but I've done my due diligence, like you mentioned, not only on the contract, but on the individuals that are, like, I want them to feel comfortable to treat it like it's their property, because that will make them want to stay longer. And I'm hands off, man. Like, with one of them, right? Every month, just gone 12 o'clock, like 10 past 12, my tenant would message saying, hi, rent's been paid. And I'm like, wow, you don't even need to message me.
I've got one tenant that does that. And it's always, I'm like, I mean, I know because I get the alert, but it's still a nice feeling that they've got
it just shows that's exactly,
they're
it's
very
the
considerate.
Yeah, and I'm not even surprised because it's the nature of them. So I would always encourage someone to screen them even before they come and view the property. I'm doing my due diligence on the phone before I'm arranging a viewing. And I think that helps if you are self-managing, if you're continuing in the buy-to-let game.
Yeah, I think, look, we're going to touch on back on agents, but I think you definitely highlighted some good points around self-management. And I think there's a study to show that, like, some of the enzymes in your in your gut are very similar to things that you have, like, within your brain. And when they say, like, gut feeling, the person that you think there's something just not right, like, they could be the person that's on 70k
100%,
and the one that you think, I've just got a good feeling about them is on 25. A lot of the time, trust your gut for good reason, because, and I think I've told this story a few times, but there is a tenant, obviously not going to name them because they're still my tenant, and if you know who you are, I love you. However, I had a bad feeling but they happened to slip through the cracks. I confused them with somebody else, and we ended up going ahead. If I've got 50 tenants, that one person contacted me more than the other 49 combined. I think we checked at a point and they'd sent me like 200 emails in the space of a year. So I think definitely that due diligence, and just the good thing about being a private landlord is you're not in a computer said no scenario. So you can do in-house referencing. But then there's some common sense. So you might have an affordability criteria of 30 times the rent. And somebody might have to earn 35k. But they only earn 32. But if you can see if you say, look, send me 6 months of statements, and every month they've got a bolster in their account, and you can see their rent's due on the 1st, they pay it every month on the 1st, they're not on OnlyFans or William Hill every day, and you can see that, you know,
I've got a story about that.
they use their money very well. But sometimes I'll see somebody, I'm like, look, they were previously paying 1,500. Now they go into a room, they're only paying 800. But every month they're down to their last penny.
Yeah,
And you just say, look, it's just a sign where you can make a gut decision by doing that extra bit of due diligence.
Bro, 100%. And when I started self-managing the one in Wood Green, I was desperate, and you learn from mistakes. You learn from mistakes, and I got that tenant in, and like you said, one tenant caused more than the other 49. Bro, I still get scared when I see my phone ring. And I spoke to my boy about this as well. I still, like, when I see a tenant call, I'm like, shit, I hope it's okay. Like, you still have that feeling, regardless if you've been in the game for long enough. You still have that fear.
Do you know what my fear is?
Go for it.
Rain. When it rains heavily.
Oh, yes.
Because out of all my contractors, by the way, if you're a roofer, shout me, because I need good roofers.
Which area?
So I'm in South London. Most of my stuff's in South London.
Yeah.
But like, roofers are not people you need until you need them, and then it's urgent.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're not people you're using all the time and can promise work to regularly. And then sometimes, like, I've just had a few, because I buy a lot of period properties, where when it's raining really hard, I just think, who's going to phone me today? Like, somebody's going to phone me about something.
And do you know what? If it's so mine are flats in London, and the managing companies of the building, bro, roof work, they're so slow. Yeah. And that's probably the thing they need to act fast on, because it's causing issues to their building.
It's going down. And that's where it's like, if you're at the top, you're super
that's
bothered.
Mine. That's
if
mine.
You're at the bottom, you're like, you know, when you get around to it.
That's a good point. Or it's a relevant point now, because one of my properties, it's got a few roof issues, and it's had that on the other side of the building. You need to clean the roof. You need to sort the roof out. But then, bro, that's the impact is that service charge. Because our service charge is going through the roof on
literally,
like on every property. And you know, when you're making that call, watch next year's like forecast budget, whatever. But bro, you also touched on, you know, that gut feeling, yeah? When I was doing viewings about 5 years ago, I had a porn star come and view my property, and she's like, you probably know who I am. I'm like, no, I seriously don't. I don't, honestly. But anyway, she's like, nah, bro, don't look at me that. But then she's like, I'm like, I've got my list of questions that I just ask. She's like, oh, for what reason are you moving? I've had a fight with my ex-boyfriend, who's also a porn star. He hit me with an iron. Okay, cool. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, but in the viewing, I'm still very lovely. I'm like, okay, you know, we're gonna
absolutely.
We've got a number of applicants, and we're gonna see where we go with it.
Because I want them to want me. I want them to want me. And touch wood, I've been blessed. For example, I gave you the example of in Wood Green, where my tenant was being moved out by the council. I didn't find her, but I still had a good. Every time I go around, if I went to check the property, Christmas card, box of chocolates for the kids, whatever, it's an easy win. And they're like, oh, we've got a nice landlord. Do you know what? I'm not surprised with all the regulations changing, but I feel like a small minority treat tenants badly, and that ruins it for all of us. Because the rest of us, as long as you don't need to be an exceptional landlord, you just need to not be a bad landlord. You do the basics, and you'll be perceived as a good landlord.
Yeah, I think you just got to have, like, you know, with everything, like, business is human. Like,
Facts.
How would I feel?
Facts.
Because I've been on both sides. At the moment, I'm currently renting because it was fit for purpose for, you know, doing up my house and what have you. And I'm loving being a tenant. I call my landlord, I'll be like, well, I'll call the agent and be like, hi, this happened, need a new fridge. They're like, all right, fine, we'll send one over. But it's just the reality of, look, managing expectations.
True.
So I think everybody has to have an even keel of expectations. I say, look, if, for example, you've got a door that's creaking a little bit, realistically, that needs to be fixed anytime from now towards the end of the month.
Yeah.
But if you want me to send somebody out as an emergency and I have to overpay for a contractor, it's going to be reflective when I look at the overall repairs, much like the service charge, you look at rents at the end of the year. So I think it's very much a bit of give and take between landlords and tenants. But you need to just have reasonable lead times. If there's the toilet's blocked or broken and there's one toilet in the house, that needs to be dealt with ASAP.
You hit the nail on the head of managing expectations. Like, just communicate back. If a tenant comes to you and says, "Oh, by the way, I've got a problem with X," I'll try and respond ASAP, because at least they feel like, oh, actually it's being dealt with, as opposed to not responding or leaving it for months. And then they'll actually appreciate that. So when it comes to renewing or increasing rent or whatever it could be, they'll be more comfortable. Actually, no, Amish looks after us. Do I want to leave? Am I prepared to pay the additional amount? I wouldn't always encourage that. But in the current market, I think as long as you've ticked the boxes of being a good landlord, you'll be able to increase rent and the tenants will want to stay.
Because it's transactional costs, right?
Yeah.
For them to move, it's removal
Yep.
fees, it's going to look again, it's having to go through the referencing process, it's maybe the bed fit there, but it doesn't fit there.
And they're settled.
And likewise, we don't want tenants to leave, so it's a win-win if we
Facts.
can find like, a small increase in line with inflation potentially that works for everybody. What do you think is the most difficult part of being a landlord?
Well, the most difficult part is finding good tenants, I think. However, I don't think that's the biggest challenge for landlords. How about, sorry, let me rephrase that, yeah? The most difficult part is finding tenants, but the reason why it's so unattractive as a landlord now is because, bro, you're penalized for being a landlord. There's no protection for landlords, and I don't even think in buy-to-lets now, if you bought a property 20 years ago, the rate, not only would you get good cash flow, but you're also going to benefit from capital appreciation at a time where property prices were rising. Now, I can't see, this is a common topic now, I can't see property prices rising at the same rate that they did 20 years ago.
I think definitely you're not going to see as exponential increases, particularly in the flats market. We've seen in terms of new stock, if you look at areas like Lewisham's a great example around the Hither Green area, like, there's been thousands of flats built, but not a lot of houses. So
true.
Because of supply and demand, the flat prices haven't really increased, but the, houses semi-detached have increased quite a lot. So I think it depends on the type of property.
But do you think, that if someone wants to invest in houses, in 10 years time, they're still going to benefit or see that as a good investment as if they would have if they purchased 20 years ago?
I think it's all relative. So whilst your capital appreciation may have been better 20 years ago, and I think that's definitely going to be the case, you would potentially, like, there's a lot of stocks that you would do a lot better if you invest in Apple 20 odd years ago.
Sure.
But is Apple still a good investment?
I hear you.
Doesn't take away from the fact that maybe it's still a safe investment, but it depends on your attitude towards risk.
I hear that. And then there's opportunity cost. But also, if you're investing in houses to rent it out, bro, you're getting screwed on tax.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like they've made it. So now if someone's like, I've got money, what should I do? I would encourage them to do flips more so than become a landlord and have that stress of being a landlord. And any other business, you have a loan, you can deduct that when you're working out your profits. Whereas if you buy on your personal name, you can't. I don't see, we've got a housing problem in the UK, yet you're penalizing those who are giving supply to the market.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it seems very counterproductive, and I think even despite having a change in government, I don't think there's going to be any U-turn on that. But I do think landlords, you're triple penalized. So you pay tax to earn your money, and you're taxed. Then you buy a property and you pay stamp duty and you're taxed. Then you can't claim the interest anymore as an expense. So previously, for those that are not familiar, in your personal name, let's say you had a property that you were renting out for £1,000 a month, and your mortgage was £800, you'd pay tax on the remaining £200 profit. You're now taxed on the entire £1,000. There are some deductions, but relatively speaking, your tax liability is a lot higher. And then, even if you pass that property on in the future, if it goes beyond the inheritance tax threshold, you're then taxed again for passing that property on. So I think a common issue and a common sort of gripe of landlords is not that they don't want to pay tax. It's the repetitive double, triple, quadruple tax throughout the process.
And there's you can put it in a limited company, but there's disadvantages to that as well. But I'd still encourage someone to do that. Although, if someone says when I was looking at buying through a limited company in 2017, I'm an accountant by trade, but I don't specialize in property accounts. So I spoke to 5 different accountants, and I realized I'm correcting them on their knowledge because I did my research. So they're like, no, buy in your personal name. I'm like, well, what about ABC? So I wouldn't say I tell anyone to invest in a limited company, because if they need to use those funds or they're relying on that for their day to day, then you're gonna have that double layer of tax anyway. So it's subjective to individual
circumstances. I think in most instances, I don't want to put a percentage on it. In most instances, a limited company does make more sense. But what you mentioned was that, effectively, if you need the funds, so if you need the funds to live off effectively as your salary,
Yeah.
it may still make more sense for it to be in your personal name
Yeah.
because you're going to effectively paying corporation tax and then personal
Yeah.
tax as opposed to just one of the two.
100%.
But again, I think it's always best in any instance, talk to a specialist.
Yeah.
And that's what I say about property in general. You don't have to know everything. You just have to have the right people in your corner.
Yeah.
Before we move over and talk about your, planned move to Dubai, you said, I don't trust agents.
Cool.
Where does that statement come from?
So, one, bro, agents have their own agenda. Yeah. And I understand that because we're all trying to make a living here. Yeah. Put it this way, when 2017, the first property I tried self-managing, I put it on, agents called me up saying, oh, listen, we've got a database full of tenants, etc., etc. So I'm like, all right, cool. Since you've got a database full of tenants, actually, wait, I'll come to that after. They advertised it. They told me to reduce the rent on my listing because if someone sees two properties, they're going to go for the cheaper one. So they told me to reduce the rent and they couldn't deliver on viewings. Yeah. They've told me they've got a database full of tenants. So you've got a database full of tenants and you're advertising my property on Rightmove, Zoopla, etc., and you still couldn't deliver. Yet you encouraged me so much to take away traction from my own listing to bring to your listing. So then going forward, I was like, fine, if you've got a database full of tenants, cool. Don't advertise this on Rightmove, Zoopla because I want to keep my listing. But send this listing off to your database. If you deliver, then fine. I'll happily pay you. None of them could deliver. So not only were they telling me to reduce my rent, so I'll give you some numbers. That property initially rented out for 1,200. They told me to reduce it to 1,100. After that first tenant, where I walked in and there was a bloody entourage of people there, yeah. After 3 months, I was getting 1,250. So I would have paid 1,100 less their fees. Let's call it £1,000. That's what I would have received net compared to 1,250, which I managed to secure with a great tenant who was there for 2.5 years. So they have their own agenda and they don't care about the property like we care about the property. So when I'm screening tenants, I will do my due diligence on them as much as possible about them, how they treat my property. Yeah. Whereas for an agent, it's more so we need to get someone in. By the way, I'm not saying all agents are the same. Yeah. But if you have that personal relationship, they might care a bit more, but they're working. It's a checklist for them. Yeah.
I think definitely. I've been on both sides with some good agents, bad agents. I'm now generally self-managed for my own portfolio.
Yeah.
But I've got a few bits that the guys at iMove in Crystal Palace, and I've known them for a long time and work very well with them. But I definitely think in the same way you do your due diligence on the tenants, do your due diligence on the agents. It's kind of the same thing. Like whoever you're going to work with, don't just. There's a saying. It's like so you trust in God, but you still tie your camel.
Yeah, cool.
And it's like okay, like believe you hope things are going to be okay, but still do what you need to do to protect yourself.
Yeah, and do you know what? So one of my boys, he bought his first property about 1.5 years ago, and he was going to use an agent. I go, look, before you're using an agent, understand how to self-manage, because only then you can judge if an agent is fulfilling their obligations, because you know what they should and shouldn't do. If you give it to an agent straight away and you've just got into property, then you're not going to know if the agent's fulfilling their obligations or not, if they're checking or if they should be checking, or they'll get a gas set done and pay £100 when you can just do that for £40 yourself. So small things like that, you're only able to evaluate if you've done it yourself, and then you can outsource. Yeah, so I'd say learn how you're supposed to do it before you do outsource to someone else.
Okay, so learn what you want to be delivered, and then make sure that an agent can.
Yeah, in my opinion. But what's your thoughts on that? Would you?
Yeah, I think I think everything, and I say this like I say this all the time till I'm blue in the face. Like, there's no perfect strategy for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, you may have with where you are in your career now a degree of flexibility where you've got the time to take on board. Whereas somebody who's just starting up, and let's say for example someone's gone into asset management and finance and they're working 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. Don't get a second out of the office. It's not feasible for them, even if it would be great for them to understand it. Or if someone's in an amazing position or in a super high paid job, their hourly rate means even if they have to pay an agent 10, 15%, to manage, property or HMO, it's still worth it because their ROI for their time makes a lot of sense. So I think
value for them.
It can always make sense, but I think what would be good is for you. So you've already touched on high level due diligence when it comes to the tenants. What are some other top tips you would have for self-managing? You said certificates. What are some certificates do you have to get, like, to be compliant?
So to be honest, so EICR, the gas issuing the deposit protection,
Yeah.
how to rent guide, all of that stuff. Regardless, I would say all of that is, especially in today's day and age, making sure that you've done that to the
Yeah.
T is so important, because if you got one thing wrong, you've just added another 3-4 months to get them out.
Yeah, because you effectively, if you don't have like all of your we call them like ducks in
Yeah,
a row.
yeah, yeah.
So you've got your gas safety,
Yeah.
EICR, right to rent guides, AST,
Yeah.
deposit protection. I'm probably, let me know in the comment section if I've missed one.
I'm sure there's loads of videos
I'm
on this,
sure-
but the fact it's so like now I would even
But yeah,
say
if you don't have all of those things,
Yeah.
then effectively, if you go to evict the tenant, the judge will just throw it back and say, nope, sorry, you haven't done these. Go back and start again. The process starts from the beginning.
and for that, so if you're in a process of evicting a tenant,
Mm-hmm.
I would say unless you've done this a few times, just use a solicitor,
Mm-hmm.
because they can also issue a certain, I forgot what the notice is called, but that makes sure even if you haven't issued a document in the past, you're protecting yourself now. And you don't want to, I'd rather pay £400 now as opposed to 3 months of having the same tenant and more fees. Like, it's worth to,
It's pay to play
yeah,
sometimes.
fact. And you touched on like if you're in a high paid job and your hours are XYZ, what's value for you? Like that time, that stress of you trying to do something that you're not specializing in may not be worth your time. So use an expert where possible. Use an expert where possible.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we've got obviously due diligence, the certificates.
Yeah.
And then in terms of being somebody who's also got a full-time job, but you spoke about service deliveries. How do you make sure that your tenants are still looked after? Like, are you the primary point of contact? Is there anyone else? How do you do that personally?
So that's why there's so much importance in finding a tenant that you think will look after the property and not give you a headache. Because when I have had a headache tenant, I've regretted that situation straight. And I know it's because I rushed, and that was the Wood Green property. Now, touch wood, I'm hands off because I'm using it's on that guaranteed rent contract on short term. Whereas the other, who I'm self managing, bro, I'm so hands off that it feels like it's a guaranteed rent contract. Touch wood, I don't want to jinx anything.
It's always
But
the way though.
and if I do get, so I'll still, bro, it doesn't take long to answer a phone call or a quick text message to say, okay, cool, I'm going to send someone. So it might take a bit of time. But
Just
it's
having like good tradespeople that are available when you
Yeah,
do get a call,
yeah.
you can just trust that they're going to deliver on the issue.
and I'm still trying to build my network of people who I trust. But I've got a few contacts now, and that helps. And when I go to Abu Dhabi, that's going to be a challenge because I'm still going to be self managing these properties. But I don't feel like it takes that much time.
And I think this is where like networking becomes important, because when you know that, for example, okay, and we're gonna go and we're gonna get to I know the people are here. Some people want to be here for the Dubai versus UK debate, so we're gonna get there. We're gonna just stay locked in. But networking is important because, right, if you know that you're pivoting to a new section of your life, there may be somebody who's starting out, don't own property yet, but you really trust them when it comes to rent to rent. So you may say, do you know what? You manage these properties. As long as I get this guaranteed, you know that I'm not going to be here. But I can trust you that if you say my boiler broke down, I'm not going to be thinking, are you ripping me off? I know you're going to send me my
100%.
invoices. So I think it's always good. And if you are someone that's in that rent to rent space and you are out networking, people often put the cart before the horse and they start selling this. I can do this for you. I can do that.
Yeah, facts.
What I would say is just listen to, because if you Amish today and you said, okay, you know what? How's your journey going? What are your plans? So all of a sudden you find out actually you're relocating. You now know that, okay, I may be in a position to help you. So I'd say if you are looking to be in that rent to rent space and build your business, just listen. Like, you were blessed with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Facts.
But
it's a great point. It's a great point. And I think, do you know, if I should probably consider that, but I've done the hard work of getting the right tenant in.
Yeah.
I've done the hard.
no, more so like on transition.
And I should definitely consider that because it will allow me to be fully hands off on those properties that I'm self managing. There was another point I was going to mention. This I've lost it.
Don't worry, we'll come back to it because we got to get to Dubai. Those that know me know I do like a little Dubai, quiet weekend in Abu Dhabi sometimes. And you've decided to relocate. You're going. By the time this podcast has come out, you're probably actually going to be based in Abu Dhabi or Dubai?
Abu Dhabi, but I've got too many ties in Dubai. I'm
Okay,
sure
you're going to be back and forth. It's for those that are not familiar, it's hour and a half
yeah.
commute depending on traffic. So you went over to Dubai. You've bought a property there now.
So I was looking at investing in Dubai, but I was in researching behind the screen. And bro, you might see I'm sure you know that listings on Property Finder, etc., etc. They might say skyline views, and these properties are not even available. It's just from 6 months ago they put it on.
Yeah.
But when I went there, I was there for 5 days, pure back to. Everyone thought I was having a jolly in Dubai. I didn't share that I'm looking to buy a
No,
property.
he was having a jolly. I saw
I
him
definitely
out.
no,
I saw him-
that was another.
I saw him in the club. I saw him in the club.
Was it that? That was just time. That was in January.
Oh, that was a
actually.
different time.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
no problem.
So this is Easter. Easter holiday last year. I went out for 4 or 5 days, bro. On the flight there, I'm arranging view. I booked it the day before Easter holiday, Easter bank holiday weekend. Just arranged back-to-back viewings. I'd go there at 11:12. I'd get back at 11:12 at night. And I found the property when I returned home. So I was there for 5 days, but I learned so much because, so the example I was going to give, on a listing at home, you might see BK skyline view. But when you go there, bro, that skyline view is like a little dot in the background. Whereas a park view it didn't sound appealing. But when I went there, it was actually, okay, this is actually decent. So I learned so much. And then when I came back, decided to invest.
Because you know what I do, and I've seen what frustrates me sometimes about Dubai is there's a lot of people selling Dubai new build schemes that have not even been to Dubai.
Yeah.
So they're telling you about like the upside and the this and the that about being there. So what was it that actually made you say? Was it numbers? Was it the culture? What made you say I actually want to go and invest in Dubai? Thank you to those of you who have liked, shared, commented, but most importantly, subscribed to the channel. Did you know only 28% of people that regularly watch my videos have subscribed? Now we're trying to get that to 40% so we can bring on bigger and better guests and make better content for you. So if you could do that right now, myself and my team would really appreciate it. Now back to the video.
Do you know, it was probably the UK becoming less attractive. Yeah. So there was a bit of a push factor. And I spoke to a few people in Dubai where the market is booming. I don't know if I bought at a time where like I've overpaid, but I bought in Dubai Creek Harbour, where there's a lot of plans for expansion, etc., etc. Or Dubai Creek Tower might be built, which is supposed to be make it downtown 2.0, taller than Burj Khalifa, etc., etc. So there was a potential of capital appreciation. But to touch on the point that you made, right? This is why when I went there, when I spoke to certain agents who are selling a dream, but they don't realize that I understand property as well. I'm like, wait a second, that makes no sense. So if someone, that's why, bro, it's another reason why I feel very skeptical about agents, because I listened to your podcast with Peter a few months ago, yeah? And unless you're talking to someone who knows property, yeah, then these agents it's a cutthroat culture. So they have their own agenda, or they've got XYZ listings that they've got the relationship with the vendor. They're going to push that towards you, whether they think that's the best thing for you or not. So unless you're in a position where you can challenge them back and hold them accountable, bro, you'll be sold light. And
yeah, I think that's why it's always good to work. I don't know, there's some agents that are new and amazing and doing amazing things, and there's always great people, but people like Peter that have come from doing property in the UK, then have gone over there and are well established.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, desperation allows people to lower their integrity.
Yeah.
So they'll sell you something that you don't need.
Yeah.
On the basis of that they need it. Whereas someone like Peter, who's been in the game for a long time, they're there to just listen to you and be like, what do you need? Okay, this person may be able to, or I can help you, or this development will be really good for you, but it's currently fully sold out, but I'll let you know if there's any cancellations.
Do you know, bro, you touched on a point in that podcast saying if someone's showing a bit of desperation, they kind of lose a bit of credibility because you're like, are they pushing it for their own? So that's why, unless you're speaking to someone who treats you like their long-term client, who they know that if you buy now, then they'll come back and they might, like, that's going to be future business for you. So you want to treat them well. You don't want to pull a quick one. But it's such a, I don't know if you've seen Dubai Hustle on BBC iPlayer. Like that, because when I went there, I was like, oh, I'm a bit skeptical about everyone else. There was a few who I thought, actually, no, they treated me well. But I was a bit skeptical about how they went about pushing some of their properties that they had available, as opposed to what was right for me. And then I challenged them back on that, and they're trying to justify. And I'm like, wait a second, do you know what? When you try and justify a wrong point, you've lost credibility. I'm walking away.
So you ended up with Creek Harbour. That was the area that you settled on. I think it's interesting, like you touched on, like the skyline idea and, you know, understanding value for money by actually being there. And I think if people are considering Dubai, I was a juicer, I wouldn't be the person that's investing remotely.
Yeah.
I'd go out there and
Yeah.
really get a feel for the area, much like you would in the UK,
Yeah.
because I see it in the UK. Sometimes people are like, I'm buying this HMO conversion opportunity in Liverpool. And I was like, send me the area. And I promise you, like this area is like, oh, it's a HMO opportunity.
Yeah.
Every house on when you go on Street View and you go do a 360,
Yeah.
every house is either boarded up, been on fire.
Yeah.
Like, look, so it's like you've got to really understand the area. And Creek Harbour looks really nice. It's got
quiet.
a lot.
Quiet.
It's quiet now.
Yeah.
It's quiet now, but you can see the potential.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about when we compare Dubai to the UK market is mortgages versus payment plans. What was the sort of setup like? Because UK, we're typically looking, residential mortgage, 10% deposit based on affordability. What does Dubai? Did you buy as a residential? Did you buy as an investment property?
Yeah.
And what did that look like for you?
Yep. So basically, Dubai, when it was COVID, right? To stimulate the market, which they clearly did, because it led to a boom. They had post handover payment plans. So it was an off plan property originally. I bought it 3-4 months before handover, so in the secondary market, but it still had a post handover payment plan. So you pay about 20-30% after over the next 2 years. I don't think they're doing that anymore, but yeah, mortgages are available. And the rate, I think, maybe given the UK rates come down, it's probably about a similar interest rate. I'm not too sure on that. But yeah, it is feasible to get a mortgage there.
Yeah, I think for those on the residential space, again, I can't remember. I think the deposit's like 20%, but I think you can borrow up to 7 times your earnings as opposed to the kind of 4.5 times in the UK. So your multiplier means your money can potentially go that little bit further.
And I do think, that because there's a market, there's a commercial model of off-plan properties in Dubai, which I don't think it doesn't exist in the UK to the same. I don't think I haven't done it in the UK. Well, actually, no, I did try buying an off-plan property in Birmingham years ago, and that's another topic. But I know people who have bought off-plan when it's been released by MR and sold it within 2 years. So they haven't had income coming in, but by the time they've sold it, they've made good money. So the next investment I do in Dubai, it probably will be an off-plan, which I'm keen to experience. Given I see, the way it works is let's say Imar, they'll release one floor at X price. 6 months later, release another floor or another number of buildings. Instead of 1 mil, it's 1.5 mil. So if you bought at 1 mil, you can just undercut Imar, which is common, at 1.4 mil, and someone in the secondary market will come and buy it. So
yeah, it's very much like early release of tickets, for
Correct.
example. If you remember, if you was a uni student, you remember like when the raves, first tickets are out, early bird tickets for a fiver. By the time you're a day before the party, tickets might be £50. If you bought your ticket for £5, even if you don't want to go, you're good being an early adopter because you can sell it for £30-40 a day before and still make an uplift.
Facts. And I think that is an alternative investment strategy that's available in Dubai, which I haven't necessarily been, and I'm sure it does exist, but I haven't seen it in the UK.
Do you know what? Funnily enough, one of a family friend of mine, that's actually how we made, like, so he was actually in finance, made a lot of money in finance, did really, really well. And out when they were doing Canary Wharf.
Cool.
He better, like, this is again a long time ago, but I always remember him telling me these stories. This is sort of pre-recession, pre-2000s, but basically he speculated on all these penthouses in Canary Wharf where they were allowing £5,000 deposit. So he's like, cool, I'm gonna buy sort of 30 of them, 40 of them, sort of thing. Bought them all effectively. They're now going to market at, he's agreed them at whatever price it was, sort of 500, and they're now going to market at 700. So they actually paid him to not undercut them. They paid him market rent just to keep them empty.
Wow, that's crazy.
And that's where speculating on a market with good information, with good analysis, can help you make a lot of money. But I think for me, and again, I'd like your thoughts on this. The UK market, is a lot smaller in terms of, when I say a lot smaller, it's a small island. Unlike Dubai, we don't make new land. So London's not getting any bigger. There's not a lot of land to develop. So if you buy in a certain area, you're pretty sure that area is going to be good forever. Right? If you buy in Chelsea's never changed. It's never going down in price. It's one of the most desirable places to live. Dubai, on the other hand, because it develops so quickly, you can have an amazing area that's great for a couple of years and then Harbour Creek didn't exist.
Correct.
This is a whole brand new area.
Yeah.
So the area they were saying, oh, actually, it's going to be Emirates Hills, or it's going to be Jumeirah Golf Estate,
Yeah.
or it's going to be. There's so many next new areas that I think you have to have that higher level of attention to detail when it comes to investing.
Joe, it's a few good points there, yeah, because one, it encourages, or that's why we've got a market of refurbishing properties here, which doesn't exist as much as Dubai, because they're just creating more. There's more land for you to build up, and certain areas. Like a lot of people talk about JBC. When I went there, and this is only after being there, and I can see it flesh, because it's not an Imar community. A lot of people told me yields are higher in JBC, yeah, but for a first-time investment, I wanted a smooth, stress-free transaction. And when I went to JVC, bro, I didn't know if I was standing on the desert, if I was standing on a road. There's no signs. And I'm sure that was just where I was, or the block I was seeing. Whereas in Imar community, bro, they're going to make sure you got a sign there. It's clean. There's a palm tree here. There's a hospital.
Because it's more holistic. They deal with the entire infrastructure rather than individual developments.
And what was the other point I was going to mention? In certain areas, there's so much greater, like there's a greater chance of capital appreciation because like if you buy early in Dubai Creek Harbour, there's no station there right now. When a station becomes there, that's going to increase the value. Although the flip side to that, is that I don't think the lifespan of a property is anywhere near as long as the UK. So what I mean by that is I went to my friend's apartment.
Like the way they build, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you see when there were floods? The amount of buildings that I saw were leaking.
Bro, my mum and dad were stuck there in the airport for 12 hours because they couldn't commute anyway. It was cleared up in 2 days. But I went to a friend's apartment.
It wasn't cleared up in 2 days.
Nah?
I was there the entire time.
Wow.
I was there for like 10 days. Friend's son's birthday. We couldn't get there down at Jebel Ali. Like literally.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll show you a video afterwards.
Wow.
I was driving down like Sheikh Zayed and the water's up to like here.
Damn.
Luckily, had my car, had little lift modes, was going up. So I said, I'm gonna brave it. But otherwise I would have been stuck.
Yeah, good man. Bro, the thing, so then they're not built to counter for those disasters. Yeah. But like a friend of mine, she lives in Business Bay, right? And she's like, oh, it's a 10-year-old block. A 10-year-old block in the UK is still seen as new, yeah? I went there and I'm thinking, oh, this is so outdated. So I don't feel like the time span, like you need to be up to date with the market because what's new today in 3 years' time, because they've just built in a new area, like that's now, and they've got 10 other blocks around you, that's no longer a desirable block.
And I think that's where, for everything as a entrepreneur, investor, those problems are where there's potential opportunities, because whilst there wasn't really a flip market before, in the old Emaar buildings, like a lot of marina and stuff that, where they had great facilities, but the kitchens are now very dated, the bathrooms are very dated. There's now an opportunity to actually start to flip properties, and it's becoming a lot more popular.
True.
So it's going to be really interesting to see how your journey is in Dubai. I think if you watched this and enjoyed this, definitely in the comments, let us know. Dubai versus UK, where do you stand? I'm going to obviously get some updates for you to find out how you found things. But if people don't know where to connect with you, where to find you, how can they reach out to you?
Instagram, Amish You, that cheesy chat line. No, it's not a chat line, just Amish You on Instagram, bro.
Okay, amazing. Man. Well, we appreciate having you on.
If
you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Share it with a friend that may want to learn more about property. And we will catch you next week for another amazing episode.